You're listening to the Retire Coast podcast, where money, business, and lifestyle come together. Join us each week as we explore smarter financial planning, starting and growing businesses, and building the life you want at every stage, from millennials and Gen X to today's retirees.
Welcome back. The topic today is of interest to those of you that are thinking about retiring. Maybe you're 10 years out, 15, 20 years out or so, and you're wondering what to do. And there's a lot to do. Well, this is part of an entire series that we have designed for retirecoast.com to help people with retirement. There's a lot of material here, but this discussion right now is going to be specifically on your budget preparation checklist, and even more specifically than that, it'll be on the expense side as opposed to the income side. Many people are under the impression that their costs are going to drop after retirement. That's not necessarily true. As a matter of fact, for most, the costs may not change. If they do, they may actually go up rather than go down. And here's the main crux of that reasoning. You were spending money driving to work perhaps, or somehow commuting to your office every day. That is a cost. The vehicle is a cost. The clothing that you wear at the office may be different than you'll wear in retirement. That would be a cost. You're eating out perhaps where you could eat at home in retirement. Those are all costs that you can eliminate. But in that place of those things that you're going to eliminate, you're probably going to add some new costs. What are you going to do in retirement? You might take up a hobby that might cost you. You might do some traveling that may cost you. You might find that you're cooking at home, which may, in fact, be more expensive because you need to buy all the implements and tools and things like that to do that. So basically your life will change, and it'll change for the better for most people. However, it will not be an inexpensive route to go. When you're retired, you still have costs. You're going to have your mortgage payment if you still have it, or you're going to have rent if you're renting. You're going to have insurance. You're going to have taxes. You're going to have a lot of these costs that you just cannot just one-time pay and get out from under. Even if you pay for a car, for example, that car is going to require maintenance. It's going to require registration. It's going to require insurance and other things to take care of it over time. I know that is a fact because I paid off my vehicles, and I am paying for all these other things. I just had to paint my car because I've had it for a long time, and I'm keeping them maintained. Now, it's a good deal to do that rather than have a new car payment over time, but it's still an expense that you have to plan for. So let me go through this exhaustive checklist that we have at our Retire Coast website. And we also have a budget tool, which I'll get into in a couple of minutes. But the listing, for example, we have a lot of categories. We have the housing and property categories. It doesn't make any difference if you're renting. You're still going to have to pay some things in this. You'll have to pay possibly even maybe some of the cost for the landlord. And maybe, you have a warranty. You have your insurance security system, perhaps, for example. So there will be some cost of housing, even if you're renting. Then you have utilities and home services. Obviously, some home services may not be included in there if you're renting, but you're going to be paying electricity, water, gas, sewer, either directly or through your rent. You might have a gardener. If you're renting a house, you're probably responsible for taking care of the property itself. So there is that whole group of utilities and home services. Then we have food and dining out, and in retirement, you have to dine out occasionally. You need the ability to leave the house and go someplace. And I find that I'm eating out more than I expected, but then again, I'm also eating at home more than I expected too. So that kind of balances itself out over time. But nevertheless, that category of food and dining is important. Then you have the transportation and the automotive, as I just mentioned a minute ago. And that one can be a very expensive one. I had an $18,000 charge on my truck because I accidentally put some gasoline in the tank Now, that's a dumb mistake on my part. Should have been covered by insurance. They said no. I sued them, and I got the money anyway. But that's not the point. I still lost a lot of time and effort and had to come up with the money to pay for it before I got my money back from the insurance company. But, you also, if you have a boat, if you have a golf cart, you have all kinds of toys, maybe a motorcycle, an RV, and I have a camper, fifth-wheel camper that has registration fees and those kind of things associated with it. Plus, I'm always buying some small thing for it. So there's a whole bunch of there. You have tires, you have alignment, you have the transmission service, other kinds of things on your vehicle that you just can't get away from. Now, maybe you're not putting as many miles on it as you were when you were working, so there is a cost reduction there. But you might have a toy that you didn't have before. Then we have health care. Well, that is an entire section by itself. There's actually two sections here on our list. One of them is on the reoccurring health care, such as going to the dentist and going to the eye doctor and the ophthalmologist and the dermatologist. And you will find as you get older, you will be going to the doctor far more than you ever did before. You'll be doing these quarterly or annual checkups. If they find something, for example, polyps, then you'll have to go back more often for a procedure. And you might be having some issues with cataracts in your eyes. You have to go back for that over and over again. You'll find that conversations that take place among retired people often focus on all their health care issues. And these things come with some small copays. In some cases, maybe $40 or $50, but there's many of them and for some of you. And then there are the amounts you have to pay that aren't covered by the insurance company. So those are things that are ongoing and will be more often taking place in retirement. Then you have the healthcare one-time costs, such as medical appliances, a wheelchair, a walker, an electric scooter, electric bed, and on and on and on. These are one-time charges that you'll have to pay for if you're not getting coverage by insurance. And you'll find that while Medicare is very good, it may not be up to what you were used to at the company that you worked at before. So you're going to have to come up with some costs there. I know recently with all of these weight loss drugs, the insurance companies are only covering a portion of the cost, and people are paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. None of that was probably budgeted 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you created your budget. The next one is replacement costs. Now, I bought a new house. A lot of people do in retirement. They buy their house, and I bought a new house, so for a while, nothing needed to be repaired. I had new everything, new appliances in the house and all that. But over time, I've been in my house for 8 years now, I'm finding that things are starting to wear out. And I know for a fact that the water heater has about a 12-year life at most, so in a few years I'm going to have to replace that. I can either wait until it fails and then come up with $1,000 to have it replaced, or I can put this money in savings or allocate it if I already have it in savings for that thing. Same thing with dryer, washer, dishwasher, stove. We've already replaced the dishwasher. That wasn't expected. And other things like that will come up. How about your lawnmower repair? You might want to do some flooring. Some things are optional. You might want to do painting because you want to change the color. All of those things have a cost associated with them, and your house is going to require maintenance if you own a house. Now, there's great reasons for owning over renting. I'm not going to get into right now, and owning is far better than renting for most people in the early retirement years. You can read all about that on retirecoast.com as well. Next category would be personal and household, and that would be, clothing and laundry and hobbies and art supplies and collectibles and pet expenses. Wow, people are paying fabulous money to take their pets to doctors now to have surgery for all kinds of things. It's not like it was 20, 30, 40 years ago when a dog or a cat just lived as long as it lived and then it died, and no one really took them to the vet more often than it would need for shots or something. But now people are buying expensive food for their pets, buying real meat, cooking it in the house, taking their pets to the dentist. So all of those things would have to be included. Probably clothing won't be a big expense for you, as that's one of those things you can reduce. However, if you gain some weight in retirement, like many people do, you may have to go out and buy some, and then you lose it, then you may have to go out and buy some. Well, you know the drill if you've already been there. Memberships and subscriptions. Well, we have, of course, Costco and Sam's Club. Then you have the health club. What about that golf membership? And then hobby clubs, church donations, and other kinds of donations. You know, the Boy Scouts or the local school comes knocking at the door and they want $5 or $10. Now, these are small amounts in some cases, but they can add up over time. And then you have the software subscriptions, those insidious things that you sign up for $25 a year or $50 a year, and they just automatically hit that credit card every year. And before you know it, you have hundreds of dollars out there in subscriptions for your computer. Entertainment and travel. That's a big thing when you're retired. You know, a lot of people want to go out and travel, and you might have a motorhome or RV of some type that you want to travel, and it's going to cost you to stay at the location. It's going to cost you for fuel, food if you don't want to cook inside. There will be some expense there. A lot of people are traveling overseas, for example, as I have in past years, going to Europe. And airline travel is not inexpensive. These trips could run into thousands of dollars. How about the cruises that people are taking as well? So all of these things about the entertainment and travel side can be very expensive if you don't plan for those. Of course, if you live in an area where you like to go to Las Vegas or the Mississippi Gulf Coast where we have a lot of casinos, you've got gambling expenses too, and you need to plan for that. You know that you're going to walk out the door more often than you walk in, and with less money, you know, for example, than you walked in with. And then once in a while you might win some money, but basically over time you're going to lose. And that's fine if you understand that that's entertainment and you have budgeted for that entertainment also. So that's part of it. Then you have family travel. You know, what about the kids, the grandkids? You're going to pay to have those travel to visit you, or you're going to go out and visit them. And you should sit down and plan on that too. Maybe that's a once or twice or 3 times a year visit that you need to budget for. Then we've got education and family support. Some of you may be paying off loans that you took out for your children to go to college. And then you've got school costs for those of you that are still going to school. Supporting adult children, that's a big one. A lot of people are supported that are retired are still supporting adult children for whatever the reason. I'm not going to get into that now. But supporting grandchildren, the same thing as supporting the adult children. And then camps and sports and tutoring, lots of things to do with the family structure. And then we get into the debt obligations. Now, all of these things I'm telling you about so far would have been things you pay, say, cash for in the ideal world, or you could put them on your credit card and charge it off at the end, or pay for it at the end of the month. But for some of you, you go into retirement or you've created some debt. So you've got your MasterCard and your Visa card and your American Express card. You have to pay monthly payments on those because you don't want to dip into your retirement funds and pay them off for whatever reason. And then those student loans I referred to, they're kind of in this category here. And if you can't pay those off, you still have to make those monthly payments. Child support. You may be paying child support. Some people in retirement are paying child support. And then there's IRS fees for taxes that were not paid, repayments to the IRS, and then taxes that are due where maybe you didn't plan for that. Because when you're retired, if you're earning more income, taxable income, it might be from a taxable retirement plan, and you're not having that provider save that money and pay the IRS. You're responsible at the end of the year to pay those taxes, well, at least quarterly anyway, before the end of the year. And that may be a debt that you owe because you're not planning for it. That's something you should definitely plan for. And then there's those professional services, which everyone at some point in time will need at least one. And that would include accountants and lawyers and notaries, What about that safe deposit box rental, real estate document updates? And then what if you pay a financial planner, a fiduciary, one of those people that doesn't work on somebody else's money but yours, which is the important thing, and you're paying that financial planner to help you with your investment. And then accountants, some of you are using a CPA to do your taxes at the end of the year. So all of those professional fees need to be budgeted, and they generally can be budgeted. Now, obviously, if you have to go to see an attorney because your son or daughter is getting divorced and they don't have the money or they need some help, then that would be one of those things that would both fall into professional category and then the family issues. Financial allocations would be, and this is a cost, it's not an expense, but it's a cost. So sometimes these expenses and costs, you put them together because it's money that comes out of your pocket every month or out of your bank account. So the financial allocations could be not often 401k. That would be the case if you were working, say, part-time and you're eligible for it. But Roth IRA, you're putting money into the Roth IRA. And that would be an allocation or a cost every month. Savings allocation, if you're funding a college for your grandchildren, life insurance premiums, emergency fund allocation, those kinds of things are a cost to you, again, not an expense, but you need to put the cost and expense, whatever is flowing out, you've got to manage. And then relocation and RV lifestyle. Some of this falls into what we just discussed a little bit earlier. Movers, truck rental, utility setups, RV repairs. And I didn't mention my big RV repair thing. I was driving in a town in Texas with my fifth wheel, and I turned around a bend and went in a tunnel under a railroad trestle. And I thought I had enough clearance up above. It was extremely low and narrow. I didn't have any chance to turn around. That's my big excuse. Anyway, it tore off my air conditioners on the top. It did substantial damage. Fortunately, insurance took care of that, and I have budgeted for my insurance costs, by the way, something I didn't even list here. But that was taken care of. Nevertheless, there's still some costs out of my pocket for the deductible that I hadn't planned on. So you need to have that rainy day fund set aside for those Murphy's Law things that you haven't planned for. Well, I know at this point, if you're driving along somewhere and you're listening to me, you realize that I have just covered dozens and dozens of expense categories, and you're not going to remember all of those, and that's fine. I just wanted to give you just an idea or a taste of the expense planning that you need to do. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about the budget tool that we've included in our article, and that's on the retirecoast.com website, where you can go into the calculators hub, and you can find the calculators in there, lots and lots of calculators. Plus, you can also find the budget tool in there as well, and it's embedded in a number of our articles. So what you do with the budget tool, it's basically a Google spreadsheet, and you are permitted to download that spreadsheet and enter data in all of the blocks, except for those blocks where there's calculations, of course. And there are most of these things that I have discussed with you today are in there. There's plenty of blank lines, and you can always type over some of the lines and put in something different than what we've included in there, and then it will add up. It's more than just an expense category tracker, because you can put all your monthly expenses in. That's really what it's designed for on a monthly basis. And then you put in your monthly income. That's on the right side of the spreadsheet. So you'll see it when you go in there. But basically what it will give you is a bottom line. It will tell you if you aren't bringing in enough money to pay for all the expenses, or that you are doing really well and there's money left over at the end of the month. That's basically what you have to look at. So if you are short, there isn't enough income with your Social Security and your retirement, your maybe part-time income, then you're going to have to cut back on the expense side. And this helps you do that. You can go back through and say, well, I'm going to eliminate this membership. Take that out, 0. I'm going to reduce this. I'm going to take my food budget and reduce it down because I'm going to go on a diet, and then when you make all those adjustments, you'll see on the right side that you'll get into balance at some point. Now, the other way to do it is leave the expenses the same and earn more money. If you have the opportunity to add more hours, for example, to whatever employment you have, or to earn more money with your investments, then you can bring in more cash, and of course that balances out as well. But it's a great tool for you to start, and don't wait until you retire. You should be using this tool many, many years prior to retirement. I'm suggesting that you start 10 years out, working it at least a little bit, and start kind of playing around with it. But 5 years, absolutely. 5 years is almost the drop-dead point. Don't wait until a year before you retire. Start planning your retirement 5 years out. I did it, and it worked out beautifully for me. Almost everything that I put in place worked out almost exactly as I had planned it, which included buying a retirement house before I retired. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We have a complete article on that discussing, and the basic thing with that is if you're going to finance it, you can buy that when you're working because then you've got good credit and you've got high income coming in. Your debt-to-income ratio is usually pretty good, and you should be able to get a loan at the lowest interest possible, especially if you have good credit. It's more difficult to get a loan after you're retired, not impossible, and you can get one, but you will probably pay a higher interest rate. So it's best to buy that house before you retire if you can, and then when you do retire, then you can sell the one that you're leaving, and it should work out fine. It worked out fine for me. But that's just one part of the planning for 5 years. Other parts are saving the money and allocating the investments, making sure that you're earning something on that money. And you'll find out that over time, you'll be able to put away a lot more money because you're focused on what you need. You've got your budget set up there on your income side. You've been reducing your expenses all along. You're finally saying, hey, I just don't need this anymore. I don't need this toy. I don't need this, or I don't need that. And one of the things you end up doing is just selling off a lot of things that you don't need and then canceling subscriptions that you don't need. So you go through this whole budget process, this whole psychology saying, hey, my life is going to be different. It's going to change. It's going to be great, but it's going to be different. And I don't need all of this that I have today. So one of the things that you might want to consider is that car you're driving. If that's your car to do your commute in and it's too expensive, then sell that car off, for example, or pay it off so you don't have a payment on it. Those are all part of the longer-term planning. And then as the day comes closer and closer and closer, you're much more comfortable about it. And when you go to that retirement party, you can smile and laugh and have a good time with everybody because you know that tomorrow when you get up, you know what you're going to be doing. You've got your second act planned already. In my case, my second act was to become a real estate agent and then a broker. I decided that I always had loved real estate. I was a big-time investor for decades, and I knew so much about it, and I enjoyed it. I decided to get into it and help to supplement income, and then eventually, and that was part of one of my series that I've written for retirecoast.com, starting a business after retirement. And then I started several other businesses as well, and it's fun because these businesses that I started are things I wanted to do and that I enjoyed doing. And for many of you that have worked in the same job for decades, you don't mind it, but do you really enjoy it? And you probably are considering that. Maybe you don't enjoy it. Maybe you did it first. It's changed. Everything's changed at work. And now you need to do something that you enjoy. That's what you do in your second act. Enjoy the second act. Do what makes you feel good. And it's a lot easier to do that if you budget and plan well in advance. Now, on the earning side, you need to start 10, 20, 30 years in advance if possible. and put some money away and use all of the available tools. Again, we have articles about that too, how to make the most effective use of the 401k, how to use the Roth IRA, how to use the two together, take advantage of any other kinds of methods that you can use to save money, and in general, get prepared well in advance. And then we've got some articles to talk about, well, you don't necessarily need $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Again, you need to read about that. I don't want to give it all away here. But nevertheless, everybody should be able to set up a great retirement plan and make it happen after retirement. Well, thank you for coming to Retire Coast podcast. And please visit our blog site at retirecoast.com and then sign up on the first page to receive notices of our new articles. We're redoing our homepage, should be done fairly quick, and then take a look at our what we call evergreen articles on, for example, a Mardi Gras on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Fascinating information, and we keep it updated every year. The same thing with some of the major events that occur down in the South. For those of you that have never been down here, you probably should come down and visit. And then our next big series, which we're doing now, we have been doing for a while, is on the 250th anniversary of the United States. This is a really great opportunity for you to learn about what people thought and did back in 1776. We've done a deep dive into a lot of the different topics that are pretty interesting. They're not typical. For example, how'd the money supply work? What did people do for a living? Where did they come from? In other words, who were we? That's one of the titles of one of the articles. So we have several articles. We're going to keep releasing more because July 4th, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the United States. And I happen to have been fortunate that my forefathers were here in the early 1700s, fought in the Revolutionary War, and so I have a tie to them. But nevertheless, another one of our series also, I don't want to give too much away here, but the Gen X, 20 years to retirement. This is part of what we're talking about in this podcast here, but we have a whole series of that. All kinds of things that you need to know and do in order to get ready for retirement if you're Gen X, and you've got about 20 years to get prepared. Well, thank you again for coming, and please come back and listen to our next podcast.